Welcome, everyone, to RB1 Colon, a fantasy football podcast, part of the Fake Teams podcast channel. I am the consummate professional, worshiper of Nikhil Harry, friends with the Oracle, constant downer of Alvin Kamara, your humble host, Pete Rogers, and I'm joined by all of the guys. We have the Duck Father, recovering Texans fan, DK Metcalf's number one admirer, and the man formerly known as Steve Timberland, resident old man Clark Barnes. El Saboteur, captain of the Buccaneers bandwagon, proud father Quentin Nelson, Scotty Miller fanboy, the coach whisperer, the wine sipperer, the Will Disley, working girl Jordan Smith, and fantasy football's premier internet doctor, the number 2 Walter Sobchak, but number 1 Tarzan, fan of what scientists lovingly call facts, thinks your favorite team is run by donkeys, the ginger mustached man, Nick Bodiford. Guys, how are we doing today?
Doing great, Pete.
Doing great.
Good, Pete. How are you?
I'm amazing. My Monday and Tuesday, Nick, were incredible. There was so much news that broke Tuesday in the NFL. Unfortunately, we won't be able to cover all of the crazy trades that went down. I mean, just seeing Patrick Mahomes after signing that massive contract with the Chiefs get traded for only a couple of fifth-round picks was just mind-blowing to me. But unfortunately, we'll have to save that for another show as we are going right into the AFC South deep dive. And we'll get right into that.
It was wild
South, right?
news.
NFC South. Yeah, is that what I said?
Oh, I was like, well, guys, it's going to be a fly by the seat of your pants episode for me because
I just want to send everyone listening to the show on a quick internet search as be like, wait, did I miss something? No, you did not miss something. I made it up because we were actually recording this Monday night. So we don't even know what's going to happen Tuesday and Wednesday. So no news. Anyways, let's get into it. You know the segments by now. Let's start off NFC South, trustworthy elites.
There's no one more trustworthy than the elites. Waiter, I ordered the 89 Chateau, not the 99.
Nick, let us join hands in the sunset and start this off together as we both want to talk about the one and only Julio Jones. I'll let you lead things off here.
Sure. So in each of the past 5 seasons, Julio Jones has finished in the top 7 in both half-point PPR and full-point PPR scoring. The passing tree is dreadfully barren going into this year, as it has been frequently. Outside of Calvin Ridley, Russell Gage, Laquan Treadwell, Blake Christian, and Olamide Zaki. I don't know who these people are. At tight end, they've got unproven guy Hayden Hurst, who they shipped a second round for to replace Austin Hooper. Maybe he will end up being. Yeah, he might not be. We don't know. He was a good prospect, but we haven't seen anything out of him. So anyway, Julio, he's in for a mammoth target load. At his ADP, he continues to fall into the second round. And half-point PPR, he's going as the first pick in the second round. Last thing I want to mention is that the Falcons' schedule, top to bottom, is just brutal in all aspects. Whether we're talking about their pass defenses they're facing, their rushing defenses that they're facing, or the offenses that they're facing. And what we've seen under Dirk Cutter, and forgive me if I get this wrong, but during his time as the Falcons coordinator, Matt Ryan goes over 600 pass attempts. So when we see these
without fail,
when we see these really difficult schedules, what that means is shootouts. And Julio Jones, it doesn't really matter what the defense is that he's facing. It would be great if it was a bad one, but as long as the opposing team is just putting points on the board and they just have to keep throwing the football, Julio Jones is going to be getting 8 to 10 targets a game.
Yeah, I initially had Chris Godwin as my trustworthy elite. And then I rechecked the rankings and I saw the fact that somehow, you're right, Nick, Julio Jones is sitting there for you at the start of the second round. He is the wide receiver 5, I believe, in half-point PPR. And it's just it's just preposterous to me. It makes no sense why people are so down on Julio. Julio, I think, is going to be certainly flirting with number 1, probably top 3 with not too much effort on his part. And we could see this absurd wide receiver stat line get passed from the NFC South from Michael Thomas last year to Julio Jones this year. The guy saw 157 targets last year. 2018 saw 170 targets. I don't think it's out of this world to think that he's going to see another 150-plus target season. And a guy like Julio, who's shown no signs of slowing down despite hitting 30, I will take him as my wide receiver 1 and never ask a single question ever again.
So I know why he's that far down in the ranks, and it's because fantasy analysts and writers survive on clicks, and they need people to read their articles. So we often like to get really clever and talk about the new hot thing that is going to happen. And this is one of those cases where that's just incredibly stupid to put all of these people in front of Julio Jones, who's been really good for 5 years and nothing has changed. So this is this is perfect for this segment. It's a really obvious one. And it's one where you can reap some value for it. Like if you have the 10th or 11th pick, you should be celebrating that people are making this mistake. And you should start your team with Julio.
100%.
I like to think that for this season, all the talk we've done over the past couple of years about Julio Jones having a touchdown allergy, we've just incepted the minds of the fantasy community, because that's what you hear everywhere. But now I think is finally where it just goes the other way and people aren't ready for it. Especially when you don't have a solid number 3 wide receiver, and Hayden Hurst is definitely not better than, Mark Andrews or something like that. Because
Clark, why don't you give us your trustworthy elite for the?
Yeah, this isn't too exciting. It's just obvious. I want people that feel like they don't get the top 3 selection. I think there's a 5 running back tier, and then you start another tier of running backs. But Alvin Kamara is amazing. He was hurt all last year, and he's just one of those guys that all NFL players look like they're men amongst boys in college, and then very few guys make that transition to the NFL and just look like they're faster and quicker and not trying very hard. And Kamara is one of those guys. So if you draw the number 4 pick, the number 5 pick, Kamara is still a target. He was hurt last year and still finished as the RB15. New Orleans is one of the best offensives in the league. So yeah, boring, but Alvin Kamara is good. You should draft him.
As the constant doubter of Alvin Kamara, I won't, but you are correct, Clark, in that you should.
So I think I hope that Sean Payton finally took his own advice. We talked last year about Sean Payton drunkenly telling Evan Silva that Alvin's soft. I think that Alvin Kamara is one of those few running backs who operates at a higher efficiency when he's on a pitch count, and that pitch count could be 20 touches. That doesn't mean that he shouldn't be getting like CMC work, 25 or anyway. I phrased that poorly, but you get the point. Keep Kamara at 20 touches.
Just not running inside off center runs on first and 10.
Yeah. Get Latavius Murray involved in there. But he has massive touchdown regression, positive regression coming. He still piled up the yards in the receptions. Doesn't he have like 81 receptions in every season or something? He's got some voodoo thing going on, but he just had this crazy. That's true. Hoodoo. He had this crazy dip in his touchdown scoring. And to be fair, he was performing well above average in the touchdown department before last year, but still he's going to find that nice middle ground. And with what you said earlier, Clark, he was playing on a torn MCL and a high ankle sprain. You're going to have negative regression when you're playing nearly a full season like that.
Jordan, wrap us up with your trustworthy elite from the South.
Yeah, this one I'm not going to spend too much time on. It's Michael Thomas. He racked up 185 targets last year, which is a lot. I know there was talk last season about can he get to 200 targets. They brought in Emmanuel Sanders, and he could eat into that just a little bit. But even if you take a look and have him playing at his previous 2 target years, it's 147 and 149, which is still plenty of good targets, in which he finished PPR 6 or PPR wide receiver 6 in those years and 8 in standard. So you're getting a top 10 wide receiver no matter what, and he just catches everything.
And for the second episode in a row, we're going to swing right into players we are not drafting.
Red alert. Red alert. Do not draft this player. Red alert. Red alert.
Because your boy is not drafting Michael Thomas this year. I am not touching him anywhere. And it's not because I don't think he's going to be a wildly productive wide receiver for you in fantasy. I think he will be. I think you can't go into you can't have the expectation he's going to do anything that he did last year. But I think he's still going to be a top 5 fantasy wide receiver. And if you want to pay that price for him, by all means do it. However, he is currently going as the number 4 player in drafts in half-point PPR. Number 4 off the board. And for me personally, I am just not going to spend that kind of capital on Michael Thomas because I would do that if he was going to sure thing give me last season again. But he's not. I mean, he's going ahead of Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, Devontae Adams, Joe. Like, I would rather have a number 1 running back there and then wait on wide receiver, since this is such a wide receiver rich year in fantasy, and we've talked about that plenty. It's nothing to do with Michael Thomas as a fantasy asset this year. I think he's going to be phenomenal. I am just not going to use my number 4 overall pick on Michael Thomas.
Yeah, I'm not taking him at 4, but I would take him at 5 or 6. So I don't think I am like on board really with this take.
Nick's just split in the middle.
Yeah, taking just to kind of spice things up here, what I do love about Michael Thomas is that he really doesn't have to battle many guys for targets. Alvin Kamara is going to be the number 2 receiving option there. Jared Cook will be a great tight end, and then Emmanuel Sanders will contribute very nicely in a real football sense only.
Clark, why don't you give us who you're not drafting in the South, NFC South?
Yeah, so this is one of the guys that I think we're trying to get too cute with, and that's Chris Godwin. He is fantastic at football, and I think that he had an amazing year with Jameis Winston, who loves to hold on to the ball for a really long time, and Chris Godwin and Jameis Winston, both really good improvisational players. I don't understand why everyone thinks that Mike Evans all of a sudden got bad at football. The last time Tom Brady had a guy who could stretch the field and was tall like Mike Evans, they went 17-1. Pete, sorry, I don't mean to drudge up old.
18-1, but yeah. Well, yeah, I guess
bad
have a plan. Okay, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that Mike Evans being the X bodes very well for him, and the Chris Godwin being improvisational means that he will have a good year, and that the Buccaneers will be much better this season. But for where he's going, I think that we've all kind of lost our collective minds with the Chris Godwin hype.
Yeah, I think people were like, Chris Godwin was created in the lab for Tom Brady. They're going to be perfect together. And if they get in sync, and they very well could be, and I think it might be an instance where they're great football-wise. Like, I think of Tom Brady with Edelman to a certain extent, but like Danny Amendola, when the moment came, Tom Brady knew exactly where Amendola was going to be, and Amendola was making those big catches for him. And like in a football sense, Danny Amendola was doing big things for the Patriots. Fantasy-wise, he didn't offer you anything. Now, Chris Godwin's going to obviously offer you a lot, but I kind of agree with you, Clark, in the sense that I feel like people are way hyping up or overhyping Chris Godwin for being like the clear number 1 guy in this Buccaneers offense, and that detracting from Mike Evans, when in reality, the two of them might be a lot closer from fantasy production than we might be expecting. And since I can get Mike Evans as the wide receiver 8, as opposed to paying up Chris Godwin, the wide receiver 6, I mean, it's 2 spots, but Chris Godwin's going 18 overall, Mike Evans 26 overall. So I can wait around and still get a part of this Buccaneers passing game, a big part.
So, Godwin is an exceptional talent. Here's my hang up. They start the season against the Saints and the Panthers, and then they get 4 ball control teams in a row: Broncos, Chargers, Bears, Packers. After that, the schedule opens up either with just defenses that are in tatters, or offenses that are just going to force the pace. So what I'm kind of thinking is that Godwin is more of a trade target for me in that weeks 3 through 6, rather than a draft target, because there are some receivers who I prefer their floor and ceiling a little bit more. Now, again, we've talked about this. The Bucs are probably going to live in the red zone, and if he can assert himself as dominant in that area, then you don't have anything to worry about. But I think I'm just more interested in a guy like Adam Thielen or Amari Cooper, who one is on who has like 160 target upside, and another who's just on this crazy high octane offense that is going to have a defense that really struggles to keep offenses from scoring and consistently push the pace.
Jordan, who you not drafting this year?
So my stay away is Drew Brees, mostly because he's a QB9 and he kind of falls into that zone of quarterbacks like 7 through 12 in mid rounds that I'm just not going to use the draft capital for. I'd rather wait a few rounds later and get somebody who will likely outperform because drafting him as a top 10 fantasy QB when he finished 21st last year is a little bit of a stretch to me. And I think that just getting a piece of other players in that offense is a better idea for you rather than paying the QB9 value of drafting Drew Brees.
Yeah. Oh, Clark's got words.
So this is why counting stats can be deceptive, and I would invite you to look a little bit closer at what happened. Drew Brees finished as the QB 21 last year because he missed 5 games. Drew Brees was the number 5 QB in points per game.
But he's not getting any younger.
That's fine. That is a fact I will not argue with.
I think him going as a top 10 quarterback is perplexing in fantasy. That doesn't make sense to me. I can rattle 10 quarterbacks off the top of my head I'd rather have in fantasy than Drew Brees. One of them's Ryan Tannehill.
Heavy burden being the only person being right about quarterbacks on this episode and the last one.
I'm not going to lie to you. I did forget that he missed a couple games last year, which brought his fantasy overall finish down. But still, I'm not that excited about your
Jordan. It's nothing compared to starting an argument about Nick Chubb and then realizing that the stats actually really weren't that different between Nick Chubb with and without Kareem Hunt on the field. So then completely ditching your argument for why you're not drafting Nick Chubb. Nick, give us a player who you're not touching this year.
Yeah, let's do this. Fisticuffs. Todd Gurley is a bad draft pick. Reports that are being disputed indicate that he's been limping in between drills, that he's looked really good like when he's going full speed, but basically right afterwards he's limping as he's walking around the practice field. We've talked ad nauseum about this for 2 years now. He has a degenerative knee. That's not going to get any better. The cartilage is damaged, and that's all there is to it. Like I mentioned in the Julio Jones section, they play a very difficult schedule this year. Now, their run defenses are like mid-tier. That's kind of like the one thing they have that's like not that hard is that the defenses are just sort of middle of the road. I think that he's going to probably – so here's the thing. He's either going to get a lot of work earlier on and he's going to burn out, or they're going to spell him with like friggin' Quadri Allison, and the offense is just going to struggle, which is why I think they're going to just have to lean so heavily on the pass game. They will throw the ball to him, but the coaches early on were saying we will not have a pitch count for Todd Gurley. Now that he's walking around limping in between plays, they're saying, yeah, we're going to have a pitch count for Todd Gurley, just to be factually accurate here. Yeah, he's going at the very beginning of the 4th round at pick number 29 overall. There are just a lot of dudes there that I am much more interested in. Smith-Schuster's one, Adam Thielen another, Amari Cooper. I think James Conner is somewhere around here. Anywho, yeah, Gurley is just too much of an injury risk, and I think that this projects to be such a Julio Jones and another receiver season for the Falcons.
On principle, I have to reject Todd Gurley as a running back option because James Conner does go like 14 picks behind him, and I talked about how much I'd rather have James Conner. I don't mind Todd Gurley if he goes in like this might be improbable too, but if he goes in like the 5th round, maybe the 6th round, I don't mind taking a stab at it because he did end up finishing like running back 14 last year, despite missing a game and not looking that great. But he would have to take like a pretty precipitous fall for me to grab him.
I will be talking about him shortly as we move into league winners. But first, we're going to take a quick ad break. All right, we are back. Nick is not drafting Todd Gurley. I, on the other hand, think he could win you your league. Oh my gosh, I did it! I just landed a league winner! Obviously, the injury is something you need to monitor. That is a big risk with Todd Gurley, but that's nothing new. What I just like about him and have a hard time not talking myself from is the fact that, first of all, he's been moving up in drafts, which is a little bit annoying because when I made this list, he was like at a perfect level of, I think middle / maybe even back end of the 4th round. And now he's like the first pick of the 4th round, which is really dumb. I hate how ADP changes. Stay where it was and never change. But since we are living in a fluctuating world that's ever changing, going as the RB15 in half-point PPR, the two things that I feel like are always I have a hard time saying no to Todd Gurley is the fact that we know he can't do it. And like what Jordan said, even when he didn't look great last year, when he was not even like the unquestioned bell guy in LA, he put together an RB14 season. In Atlanta, who's behind him? Like, who's going to challenge him? Now, I think that if he does ultimately break down, that's something to worry about. But it's going to be like workload, go. And this workload, running backs have averaged 1,300 yards and about 10 touchdowns on the ground and 500 plus receiving yards and about 5 touchdowns over the last 3 years. So this offense can get an RB1 production out of a running back with not a lot of, they're walking into a great workload there. So this is my last year of Todd Gurley. I am saying change of scenery, change of knee practice. I don't know what, new number. I am here for one more year of Todd Gurley, and if he lets me down, so be it. But he's going in the 4th round. I can stack 2 running backs ahead of him, get a dope wide receiver, and then take him as my running back 3. And he could perform as a top 10 back for me. So I'll take him, and I'll assume the risk that comes with his crippling knees. I made up a word there, and it's a good word.
I can't wait for Todd Gurley to show up in the guys I need to let go of podcast that we do next offseason.
Guys, Pete needs to move on. Oh, remember when I said I love Todd Gurley? Yeah, I needed to let go of him. All right, let's move on to other league winners. Jordan, let's stay in the Atlanta Falcons offense because you have a league winner from this offense as well.
So this isn't particularly surprising if you pay attention to a lot of fantasy folks outside of this podcast and have just been keeping your ear to the ground about the potential of Calvin Ridley. But I think my take might be a little bit spicier in this case because I think that he has a chance to jump into the top 5 to top 8 wide receivers this season and has the potential to be like this year's Godwin, who went from wide receiver 27 in 2018 to wide receiver 2 last year. Now he might not jump all the way to top 2, but I think that's pretty good potential there, especially for both of them. In either case, are going in the 4th round ADP, or Godwin had a 4th round ADP value. I actually can't remember what ADP round Calvin Ridley is at. But at any rate, he's a tremendous route runner, and Atlanta's, like we said before, is going to throw a lot. He finished last year number 5 in defense adjusted yards above replacement and number 2 in DVOA. So he's a very efficient wide receiver. And I still like Julio Jones. And the reason I started making the comparison to Chris Godwin, because I was like, oh, these guys got 2 good wide receivers. But then I thought to myself, why can't both of them eat like the Buccaneers wide receivers did last season? So Calvin Ridley, especially going as late as he is, I think he could make a pretty big jump and help you win your league.
Yeah, Jordan, I like this pick a lot. There's a reason why I picked him as my bold prediction all those months ago to outscore Julio Jones this year. He's a tremendous player, and he was the guy I was hinting at who was a unbelievably terrible vertical, but his shuttle drills and his 10-yard split, you can see it every cut that he makes, he's so friggin' explosive. The passing tree is there. It's him and Julio and whoever else is playing third fiddle, whether that's Hurst or Gurley or Laquan Treadwell. This just sets up to be a season where I think that the Godwin comparison is very apt. I'm also thinking of like 2 years ago, was it, when Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster were, I think they were like 1 and 4 in the league in targets, where one of them had like 165 and there was 163 or something. There was just a couple guys crammed up there at the top. Calvin Ridley going in the 4th round is ridiculous.
Clark, give us your league winner from the NFC South.
Not someone that other people aren't talking about, but it's Ronald Jones for the old Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's had a couple of disappointing seasons so far, but has improved in each year. He's getting drafted in the 90s. And so this is someone that you'll take to fill out the rest of your roster. So while there is some risk, the upside potential here is huge. Speaking of him taking a good jump from year 1 to year 2, Ronald Jones is 23, and he has just turned 23. So he's younger than a lot of the guys that came out this year in NFL's draft. Better team. I think that they're going to run the ball a lot more because their quarterback's not going to throw for 73 interceptions in the first half of games alone. And so I think that's going to bode well for any running back in Tampa Bay. And I think Ronald Jones is the best running back in Tampa Bay. So it's a simple A to B line connection that could be totally wrong because this is the NFL and it's not always as simple as an A to B connection. But Ronald Jones is basically free, and he's Tom Brady's running back, maybe.
We've been starting to get hyped on him for a little bit now. Clark, I shot you a video earlier today on Twitter. We've been talking about whichever back shows that he's getting Tom Brady's trust is the guy that we want to target. And the report, I think, from last week indicating that Brady has been working with him on his route running that plus Arians saying he's the number one guy. If he actually gets passing game work, then that's incredible. But otherwise, what I think we get is basically a LeGarrette Blount. I think we get 12 to 15 carries, and a lot of those are going to be in the opponent's territory. So, in such a loaded offense, I really like this.
Just great calves.
Jordan is drafting an all calves team this year.
All legs. Any running back pictures of legs, I'm all in.
Oh, just wait till we get to the NFC North and we get to talk about AJ Dillon's legs. Good Lord. I saw a sideline picture of him standing there, and I was like, those are tree trunks. Coming for that job, Aaron Jones. Anyways, Nick, let's finish up league winners for the NFC South.
League winner. Sorry, the Dillon talk is just so tilting. 1,000 carry college back.
Let's do it.
AJ Dillon. So my league winner is Teddy Bridgewater, who is basically going like friggin' undrafted. He's going as the quarterback 27, and I think he's going to be. I think he's going to be a quarterback 1. And even if he's not, if he's like top 15, and you pair him with Joe Burrow in your last 2 picks, like grab Harrison Butker, a good defense, then go and get those 2 guys at the end of the draft. I don't think you're going to be sorry. What I really like about this is 1, Joe Brady. We saw what he just did at LSU last year. He tore the roof off of college football. As the LSU offensive coordinator. Number 2, this roster is loaded. So they've got the best pass catching back and all around back in the game in Christian McCaffrey. They have DJ Moore, who listeners know I'm a huge fan of. They've got Curtis Samuel. They've got Robbie Anderson. And they have Ian Thomas, who has been just waiting for the corpse of Greg Olsen to get out of his way. Teddy Bridgewater, he probably does not bring a ton to the table in terms of rushing or scrambling ability, but I just can't speak highly enough of what this offensive system is going to bring. They're top 12 and 14 in blend of pass defenses and pass defense efficiency. And perhaps the best thing of all, the amount of starters that they lost on the defensive side of the ball is crazy. I'm not going to bother listing all of them right now. Luke Kuechly's one of them. James Bradbury's another. But their defensive line has been totally decimated. And what they did was they spent 7 picks on rookies, all on defense for their draft. This is perhaps the worst defense in the league. And one thing that we absolutely love is targeting guys on what we think are going to be loaded offenses who can't play defense to save their life. I think they're going to be starting at the 10-yard line on their side of the field constantly all season long. And I like Bridgewater is becoming somebody that I really can't leave a draft without.
Yeah, Bridgewater, I think, is also an excellent, super flex target. He is going 27th. He's my number 2 quarterback in my only dynasty league. Bridgewater has proven throughout his career to be a good quarterback, not outstanding, but good. And you mentioned all of the weapons that they have in Carolina. And while I am remiss to bet on rookie quarterbacks playing well. First-time offensive coordinators who've done so well in the college game have a pretty good track record of their first year in the NFL, of doing some surprising things and catching some teams with their pants down, so to speak. So I'm excited for what's going to happen in Carolina, and I think that Bridgewater would be if nothing else, an interesting guy to keep an eye on, or like you said, someone to pick up at the very end of your draft to be a part of your streaming committee.
All right, and let's wrap up the South with late round sleepers. Shh. You mustn't wake the late round sleeper. And Jordan, let's give you this opportunity to gush about your boy.
Oh, I'm not going to gush very long. I have literally 3 words written down for Scotty Miller as my late round sleeper. Currently undrafted, YOLO. So just pick him up after the draft. Pick him up as your Mr. Irrelevant in the last round. He likely has the best line for the number 3 wide receiver spot in Tampa Bay in an offense that you hope is going to be pretty explosive. He might not be your every day or every week flex guy, but you might be able to plug him in when you need somebody on a bye week, or maybe he is just a very good guy to go in and, catch 3 deep balls and just get you 100 some yards, whatever. So Scotty Miller, I just like the way they're talking about him in Tampa Bay. It always seems like Bruce Arians has something nice to say about Scotty Miller. So.
Yeah, well, others may have heard you talk about Scotty Miller before, and, it's just exactly the kind of guy that Tom Brady likes. Lunch pail guy, gym rat, a high motor player, maybe not going to jump out of the gym, but you're
Crappy.
always going to get 110% out of Scotty Miller.
Hard worker.
Yeah, for those of you that are new to fantasy football, that's just me saying that he's white.
Yeah, this episode of The League brought to you by Bud Light. But
an interesting prospect in all seriousness.
I was really hoping that your 3 words, Jordan, were just going to be Scott T. Miller, but undrafted yellow is good too. I think he's a good player, and I think that there are a lot of mouths to feed in the offense. Justin Watson is no slouch either. Obviously, the 2 top dogs at receiver in Godwin and Evans. He's also got to compete with O.J. Howard, Gronk, and Cameron Brate. I don't see a reliable path to targets, but should something happen to one of the starting receivers, then he's absolutely somebody that we should be adding.
Clark, who you late round sleeper?
So, if you've been playing fantasy football for a long time, you know that we've always been chasing the ever elusive second wide receiver in New Orleans. And although that has failed every year for the past decade and a half, I think that this year the second wide receiver in New Orleans is going to be really interesting. And Emmanuel Sanders, he showed that he was still good on 2 different teams last year. Played well in the Super Bowl. He's just always been a very good, underrated receiver. Kind of kicked off that, Pittsburgh drafts little wide receivers late really well string and hasn't fizzled out like a lot of those guys. He goes to New Orleans where you guys are nuts to think that Drew Brees isn't going to have another amazing statistical season. It will be competition for targets. He will be 3rd at best behind Kamara and Michael Thomas, and should be. But still, a steady 3rd in targets in New Orleans is, sounds pretty good. His ADP is, 10th, 11th round, and he's just a really good player on a good offense. So I think I'll be getting Emmanuel Sanders and putting him in every time he gets 2 catches for 30 yards and missing out on all of the 4 catches for 130 and 2 touchdown games this year.
He seems like a very, very solid and reliable flex play for me this year.
It's the kind of player I don't draft because it's just going to drive you bonkers. And then, at the end of the year, it's going to look good, and he'll have been on your bench the whole, all his good games. So don't listen to me. Don't.
Always how it goes.
Yeah, I think he's a great real football player who would have immediately fantasy viability. Immediate fantasy viability should something happen to Michael Thomas.
Nick, give us your sleeper.
Yeah, just building on the previous section, Curtis Samuel looks to have the inside track to the starting slot receiver role. If anybody wants to know what the slot receiver does in Joe Brady's offense, go look up Justin Jefferson's box score results last year at LSU. It's a highly lucrative role. And Curtis Samuel, he's always profiled very well in Matt Harmon's reception perception, indicating he's a good route runner. Some might recall he actually was like a running back / receiver in college. And I wondered if he was actually going to be McCaffrey's backup in the backfield, but the team has also been talking about just getting him in space and letting him use his quickness, athleticism, vision, etc., in the open field. So I think that going as the wide receiver, what the hell ever, wide receiver 60-3, I think he's a flex option all year long.
10 out of 10 agree.
Yeah, I'm just hoping for Curtis Samuel's sake that they finally have a offensive coach in there who wants to use him in more of a play design that gets him the football, but not like in a force feeding kind of way. Because it feels like we've known for a couple of years that Curtis Samuel has always been talented, and we're like, oh, we got to get him the football, but Carolina's just never had the offense to put him in a position to be successful. It's just like, here, take the football and do something with it rather than scheming up a way to make him productive.
All right, and I will wrap things up for the NFC South with a guy who you guys have touched on earlier in the show in a negative light, but I'm going to tell you that you're all wrong and silly for saying such gibber-gabber. Hayden Hurst, I understand we don't really know what he is, but he is walking into an offense that we have repeatedly said is going to be passing the ball a shit ton. Last year, they targeted Austin Hooper 97 times, which was fifth in the league, behind Kelsey, Ertz, Kittle, and Andrews. And Hooper was second among tight ends, really, because Higbee and Kelsey were tied for 19 targets inside the red zone. But Hooper had 18. So he is walking into a tight end in an offense that targets their tight ends in the red zone and targeted Austin Hooper heavily last year. Now, is he going to see 97 targets? Who knows? But what I do know is that he's going as the tight end 14 behind guys like Noah Fant and Mike Gesicki, both of whom I would draft Hayden Hurst over. And he's going in that kind of like 10th, 11th round, which for me, or 10th round, I think, which for me is like right around the time where I start kind of thinking about tight end. I think he's someone whom you can buy, and he's stepping into a big workload potentially in an offense that has proven that they do like to target their tight end. And we just spent most of the episode talking about how Matt Ryan's going to throw 700 times and they don't have a number 3 receiver. Well, guess what? It's Hayden Hurst.
Yeah, so to be clear, my earlier comment about someone not being good at tight end, I was talking about Austin Hooper, who, if you think Jason Witten doesn't look very spry anymore, just watch Austin Hooper play a little bit. So I really like your Hayden Hurst pick here. We've at least seen some athleticism out of Hayden Hurst. And the Falcons, I'm using air quotes here for all of the listeners, wanted Hayden Hurst to go out and give him, not very big of a contract, but he will exist and he will play tight end for the Falcons. And Austin Hooper showed us last year just how valuable those two skills can be.
Always draft players who just need to exist in order to have fantasy relevance. Those are the key guys to get.
Yeah, I don't have it in me to criticize anybody's tight end 15.
Awesome. Well, there you go. First episode of the NFC. Make sure to subscribe to Fake Teams wherever you get your podcasts. iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, we are there. That is how not only you will get us, but our fantasy baseball and basketball podcast. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at RB1 Podcast. Follow myself at Pete M. Rogers. Follow Clark at NFL Clark. Jordan at Jordan_Smith27 and Nick at Ginger__Nick without a K. We will be back at you tomorrow to talk the NFC. Who knows what? Maybe West or East or North. Ooh, tune in. Until then, peace.